Steve Griffin. Nice to have you, mate.
Hi, Lee. Nice to be here.
What project are you working on right now? We spoke out the back, and there was a pretty big project that you were working on. Something about stratospheres and 3D printers and stuff like that. Talk to me about that, because that sounds interesting.
Yeah, but the Australian Defence is looking to get some capability to fly payloads into the stratosphere. And I've got a bit of experience with stratospheric balloons.
You do?
And lifting payloads to height and retrieving them. So we're working at the moment trying to just shore up some funding for some development in that space.
Are you talking fixed wing, multi-rotors?
No, this will be balloons. At the moment. I was working for about 3 years on a big fixed wing platform, 30-metre wingspan, flying at 70,000 feet.
Yeah.
That was funded out of the UK, and that project was wound up just recently, just with the start of the COVID stuff. I think it was being funded by the UK government, and they decided they had other places to put their money at the moment.
Right, yeah, fair enough. So you're talking about taking things into the stratosphere, is that the right word?
Yeah.
And then taking a balloon up with a payload, with a view of seeing how it reacts in those conditions.
Yeah, there's all sorts of defence.
There's things you can't obviously tell me.
We'd have to kill you.
We're live, by the way, so it's going to be interesting. Might get a few hits.
I wouldn't even hurt you. I wouldn't even hurt you. There's around communications, surveillance, those.
Yeah, well, it's typical army stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
When you do army putting something in the sky, it's all around surveillance, sometimes dropping things from those payloads to cause damage. But that's the way it is. So that must be an interesting little project.
Yeah, it is.
And did you say you're looking at utilising 3D printers or something like that to help with the build of this? Or
yeah, with the fixed wing platform that we're on.
Yep.
We were doing a lot of 3D printed parts. Because it's very quick turnaround, from design to prototype in a production environment.
Yeah.
Thermoform plastics or something.
Yeah, and your quality control, like that's printing right in front of you as well.
Yeah.
So,
but with the fixed wing platform, we had parts that were designed to break, so we'd have engine mounts and things that with a weak point, so that rather than breaking a $50,000 propeller, we'd break a $2.50 piece of plastic.
like some of these.
Something like that, yeah.
Although you can't take them to the stratosphere. Oh, that sounds really interesting, actually. And obviously you are bound by a lot of NDAs and you can't say too much, but I think anything working in that space is rather interesting. And
it's very interesting. The fixed wing platform was just every day was some new challenge, seriously cool stuff, some really smart tech. Like the aeroplane that we were working on, the last one, was 30 metres wingspan, and the empty aeroplane weighed 38 kilos.
I'm going to say, so what's a normal plane then with a wingspan? Like
a 737 sort of wingspan.
And then, but however, the fuselage, is that the word?
Yeah.
That is weighing, 40 kilograms?
No, the whole aeroplane.
The whole aeroplane?
The whole aeroplane weighed 38 kilos.
Okay. So obviously no one's in it. No one's sitting in it unless you got a small person, a child taking it up there. Yeah. And you obviously have to design those fixed wings differently. Otherwise, if you...
It's very light. That particular platform, it was using a technology or a system called span loading. The wing couldn't actually support its own weight on the ground. We had to carry it around on a trolley, basically, and launched.
Did you have to run with it with the arm?
Well,
throw it?
Well, we launched it off the trolley in Spain. We had an operating base, or it was built in the UK. We had an operating base in central Spain for doing the low altitude flying, and a base on the fringe of the desert out of Alice Springs. for the high altitude stuff.
And when high altitude, what are we talking? How many feet?
70,000,
And
75,000.
At 75,000 feet, what actually happens? There's no air. There's
Well,
are you touching the?
Well, we're on the fringe
cusp?
of space. Yeah, like the Armstrong line is where they normally say the edge of space is. That's at about 60,000 feet. So we're into that first outside layer of the atmosphere. Things behave differently.
Do things start burning up as well?
No,
not
it's cold.
I've been watching
It's
movies
fairly uniform temperature
Right.
up there. Much lighter winds. You're above all of the weather, which is why you want to operate up there.
Right.
Because it's a much calmer environment for the aircraft to be in.
And something goes wrong up there, it falls. Where does it fall? Anywhere in the world. If a drone falls here and we're flying one, normally a prop goes out, a drone falls from 400 feet, it'll drop pretty much where it is.
With the this aeroplane platform, it was a very efficient glider, basically. At best cruise speed, it would drop about 40 feet a minute with no power applied. So
how long does that take?
From 70,000 feet, we were talking 20 hours of descent. So
you can spin around the Earth a few times.
From in the cruise, sometimes our descent profiles would have the top of descent in the middle of the Indian Ocean to land back in the middle of Australia.
You don't, okay. So, and how'd you go with your landing? Did you nail it, or did it end up in a?
No, it's single-use aeroplane.
Oh right.
So it gets broken.
It's designed to break.
It's designed to break. Yeah.
To fall apart, and then it just falls in different parts all over the world.
No. We were trying to bring it back in one piece, and
did you?
And we did actually get a couple back in Spain, particularly.
And how long does it stay up there?
The longest flight was a couple of days.
Oh right.
With it. So.
And what sort of power source are you using?
Solar electric.
Solar electric. Okay. So no lithium batteries or anything like that.
Yeah, all lithium batteries because we get lots of sun during the day.
There's no clouds up there.
But at night time, there's no sun. The thing would start to come down, so we'd use a little bit of power to stop the thing sort of falling back through the tropopause or that boundary between the
it's a really interesting space, and obviously you're starting off on another project which involves something. It's not fixed wing. It's a balloon, which is your specialty. You have 27 years and you've broken a lot of records. So I want to know how you got into balloons and what fascinated you about balloons at the start. I have been on a hot air balloon ride. I found it amazing, by the way. I had to present for a show, and it was the most calming experience I ever had. Okay, we're talking only how many feet would I be going up in a normal?
Couple of thousand. Yep.
And it was calm and it was beautiful, and it was, for someone who's sitting literally on a basket, I thought I'd be a bit more sort of nervous. I'm not a nervous flyer, but it was actually quite calming. So did your parents take you up in a hot air balloon when you were a kid or anything like that, or what? How'd you get started?
Oh, I started out in aeroplanes.
Yeah.
When I first started work in Brisbane as a 16-year-old, I used to ride my bike out to Archerfield to go for flying lessons. I got my private license when I was 17.
Yeah.
And the plan was to go and get a commercial aeroplane license and fly aeroplanes commercially for a living. But I went for a flight in a balloon. I had a girlfriend at the time that was flying airplanes, and I bought her a balloon ride.
Well, that's nice and romantic.
For her birthday.
That's very romantic, Steve. Who said chivalry is dead, hey? How'd it go? Did you end up marrying this girl?
No, long since departed.
She had one ride and then that left you.
Yeah, no, we had a pretty eventful flight. The guy we were flying with was a colourful character, and very nearly wiped out some power lines with us on board.
Oh, that would have been a disastrous
Anyway,
date.
Yeah,
but it
so
didn't. You're
it
still here.
Didn't, yeah. So, but Julie vowed she'd never get in a balloon again, and I thought if you
The
did it properly,
relationship-
it would actually be really nice. So
The relationship was never going to happen because
No.
you wanted to fly and she didn't.
Yeah. So I ditched her and bought a balloon. So, true story.
And obviously, look, you've got here, and I'm only going through your LinkedIn profile here, but you've won 15 FAI world records and 85 Australian records in mixed gas balloons, hot air balloons, thermal airships.
Yep.
Like you are the the Michael Phelps of the aviation world, aren't you? That's a lot of records.
Yeah, it's a few.
What's the biggest record? Like, people call you up and go, "Hey, Steve, I've got a great idea. I want to do this out of a balloon." You'll go, "Okay, let's do it." Or, mate, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah, no, there's a mix.
Okay,
There's a mix. So I still like a project. Probably the biggest flight I did was a non-stop flight across Australia. In a balloon, solo.
From east to west, or
From west to east.
West
So
to
launched out of Carnarvon in Western Australia and landed just west of Rockhampton, central Queensland, 2.5 days later.
And what speeds are you getting up to when you're in the sky?
The top speed was 150 kilometres an hour, but the average was around 35, I think was the
By yourself. And when you look at that, I don't know anything about ballooning, but do you look at, obviously the conditions it's an obvious, but do you look at the winds? Are the winds a major factor? Because if you take off from WA and all of a sudden those westerlies kick, no, the easterlies, and you're going west, the opposite direction. So you need to have a look at the conditions to go, right, I've got a good stretch here. I've got a window. We've got conditions that are going to push me towards the east side for a couple of days. Let's go. It's a bit like surfers, the big wave surfers. They see conditions, they travel somewhere, and they've got to execute that job pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's very much it. It's back, and this was back in 94, 95.
It's not too long ago.
It's a little while ago. But the conditions required to get across Australia weren't very well understood. And there'd been 15, 16 attempts to do it.
So you're the first one?
No, there was the year before, Dick Smith and a friend of mine did it together.
Damn Dick.
Right.
He's everywhere, Dick, isn't he?
He is. But I got a bit involved in that project.
So you helped him out?
I helped him out. I did some of Dick's training for him for his license.
So you're like the Pierpont Langley of aviation. The person who did not manned aircraft. Yeah. The Wright brothers. That was the other person who was having a crack at the time.
Yeah.
And he just didn't become first.
Yeah.
That's all right. It's still a big achievement.
Yeah. So anyway, got Dick and my friend John across together. And when they landed, I said to Dick, someone's going to do this solo. I want it to be me.
Well, so you're first solo.
Yeah, first solo.
Well, anyone can get a team together in a basket and go anywhere, but going
so-
solo, you've got to think on your feet, I suppose. It's different.
So Dick very graciously lent me the balloon and gave me some cash towards the helium fill, which was pretty expensive. It was $35,000 back 25 years ago for the helium to fill the balloons.
I was going to say,
a lot of coin back then.
Yep.
And he helped out a bit with the retrieve and thing. We had at the end of the flight, we had he picked me up in his Citation jet and had organised sort of film crews and things.
And were you looking to land at that location, or you sort of knew it was anywhere arranged between Brisbane and maybe Mackay, or
east of the Great Divide? Was
east, yes. Over that divide is a win.
That was the goal.
Yeah.
So.
Rocky's a good place.
Yeah, up in that area, there's two ranges. There's the Great Divide, and then closer to the coast there's a thing called the Denham Range. Once you get east of the Denham Range, it's pretty much virgin bush. There's not much really to land a balloon, particularly a balloon when you haven't had a sleep for a couple of days.
Well, you're running off.
Yeah.
You're running off.
So,
Well, you're not going to.
And if you go too far, of course, you go for a swim.
And so obviously, how high are you at that that trip across?
Well, it was pretty much all above 20,000 feet.
Yep. What's the air like up that way?
Yep. It's cold.
Yeah.
So it was minus 25 to minus 30.
Did you have a mask
flight.
on the whole time?
Yeah,
have oxygen?
on oxygen the whole time. Of course, with it that cold.
20,000 feet. What's Everest?
26.
Is Everest 26? Okay,
Yeah,
so you're at that.
So got to about the height of Everest, which was the world altitude record for that type of balloon back then.
All right.
But just
that would have been a good,
really tough. No autopilot, so I had to fly the thing the whole time.
Any scary, hairy moments?
Yeah, the second night.
Because you're traveling at night. What is it like?
Yeah,
you're traveling at night.
well,
Obviously, in the day,
yeah.
you've got obviously a lot of barren land and stuff. At night,
You've never seen so many stars.
well, you're in the middle of nowhere, and you might be passing a couple of little towns with a couple of lights, but
Not much in the middle of Australia.
that must be
it was
such an awesome
dark,
experience. And by yourself.
Yeah. So it was kind of the second night I was crossing the Queensland border near Boulia.
Yep, Boulia.
And
Do the camel races there, Boulia races. Yep.
And there were great sheets of ice breaking off the balloon because there's always moisture in the air, and just anything that is in the air, moisture sticks to, and over a couple of days it just built up. So I had sheets of ice, like a metre square, sliding off the balloon into the capsule, and the burners were playing up in the cold. I was having to stand on top of this little fiberglass capsule and light the burners, every burn, with this ice coming down around me. So it was traumatic.
But obviously you completed it, and that is a record.
Yep.
And then you've gone on to do other things as well, like with all things hot air balloons and mixed gas balloons and things like that. So, I mean, wasn't there something recently that some kamikaze kid came to you and said, Steve, I've got no idea.
Yeah.
And he probably said, hear me out before you cut him off.
He did. And he spoke sort of Swiss English as well. Monster of a man, Mark Hauser, a Swiss guy who is seriously into the power of the jet stream.
Yes.
And believes that there's some the possibility of harnessing some of the power that's available in the jet stream could be part of our energy solution going forward.
So this was as much a bit of a trial, but also a bit of a daredevil, sort of like a bit of an extreme event as well. So.
Yeah. He was wanting to raise awareness about stuff in the jet stream, and his plan was to break the world ground speed record in free fall.
Which is, do you know that?
About 300 kilometres an hour across the ground.
That's quick.
So the plan was to go up in a balloon.
How high?
Under the core of the jet stream, so around 30,000 feet was the target, right into the core of the jet, and then he'd get out and make like a rocket man and go fast across the ground. So that was pretty exciting. He'd never done any really high altitude skydiving. Getting out of a balloon generally is pretty interesting for skydivers because they don't have any airspeed when they get out. So getting stable when they first exit is pretty tricky.
Like a washing machine, just tumbling around until he gets in there.
That's what can happen is that they get into a flat spin.
That's not good because you're going to pass out or something like that. You don't want to pass out. Yeah. So at what level then? Give me some context. So a normal average skydiver, what are they jumping out of the plane?
They're 14,000 feet.
14,000.
Yep.
And we're looking now nearly double.
Double
that.
Yeah. And so it's the territory of generally military skydivers only.
Right. And he has no experience. Do you need a license for that?
Well, he
as a skydiver?
He had a basic skydive ticket, a couple of hundred skydives in Europe.
Yeah, but is that based on height? Did you say, right, you're
allowed
to jump?
Well, they're only allowed to go to 14,000 feet. So when he first came to Australia, went to Goulburn, and there was an instructor there, ex-military, who did some training with him, and I did a few jumps out of a Banderandy at 20,000. And then the next jump was out of the balloon.
How'd it go?
We had a couple of issues. It was a very exciting ride at the last few
Balloon
minutes.
issues or his equipment?
Well, both. Right. We had he had a really clever oxygen system made up that was used in the emergency services helicopters, or was adapted from a system used in the emergency helicopters in Europe. Much more like a scuba diving setup than what we typically use in aeroplanes or balloons. Anyway, the system froze up. We were climbing up, going through 20,000 feet. It was about minus 40 degrees in the balloon. And all of our oxygen masks they froze and just started pouring out oxygen.
That's not good.
Not good, because...
Or not good for the actual trial, but also not good for yourself or for anyone.
Well, and it's not just the fact that we're running out of oxygen in very short time, but in a balloon you have the burners above your head, and burners and flames and lots of oxygen aren't a good mix. So it was pretty tense for a bit. We kept going. We exhausted our primary oxygen system, switched over onto the main one and onto the reserve system, and then the burners in the balloon, the pilot light and the burners went out as we were approaching 25,000.
So no light, no
flames.
What happens then? The balloon starts.
Yeah, the balloon will start to come down. And
how quickly does it come down if you don't have a flame?
Well,
if you don't use it.
My previous experience with burners going out at altitude, I was falling at about 11,000 feet a minute.
In a balloon?
In a balloon. That was a little bit higher. That was out of sort of 32,000 feet. But we're in a slightly bigger balloon, fairly lightly loaded. But I think at the top of the run, when it started to come down, it wound up to about 4,500 feet per minute we were falling. So about 80 to 90 kilometres an hour we were falling at.
In a balloon?
In a balloon.
Okay. So what does Steve do in that situation?
Steve's just hung on. From my previous experience, I knew as you come down, the thing will slow down.
Yep.
Previously, I had the balloon had twisted quite badly, and I ended up having to, when I got the burners relit, I had to burn through the bottom of the balloon to get it to reinflate. But in this one, it stayed pretty much in shape. It was a bit wobbly.
Yeah.
But we got down to 10,000 feet. The burners relit. And
did he still jump out?
Yeah, he got out. So when the burners
went out, he said, "See you later."
Well, I said, "Mark, it's time to get out. We're not going any higher."
Ah, right. Okay, so he did execute.
He did get out and went pretty quick. Didn't quite get the 300 kilometres an hour he was after. I think it was 294, 290.
Just fell short.
Something. Yeah, so it was
6 kilometres.
Close. He's since gone and broken. He got out of the back of a military aircraft in Russia. Military aeroplane, and got it there.
He got it there, so they obviously just ran out, jumped, and away you go.
Yeah, much less complex, but that's more expensive.
I was going to say to hire a Russian jumbo. What is it? What sort of jet?
I'm not.
It must have been a. I don't know.
Antonov something.
Something big that you can lower a hatch and then just run out.
Yeah,
because you're not jumping out of a jet fighter or anything like that, are you? It's really interesting. I just find hot air ballooning like pretty fascinating. The fact that people go up into space with nothing but in a balloon.
Yeah,
and it wasn't there. Didn't Branson do something? Try and break some record in a?
Yeah, Branson had there was a few years back. There was quite a few people trying to go around the world.
Around the world, he tried that,
and he had
a red crack.
5 or 6 goes at it.
Yeah,
with
No one's done that?
Yeah, it's been done now.
Yeah.
There were a couple of English guys, or Swiss guy, English guy, Bertrand Piccard and Brian Jones were the first to go around the world in a balloon. And then an American guy, Steve Fawcett, did it solo. And there's been another guy, Russian guy, Fedor Kornikov, has done it solo as well.
What's next? What's next?
Well, the Russian guy's planning on going around the world twice non-stop.
Once is not enough.
Let's go
twice.
So, I was there when he landed the first time, and I don't think he would have been up to doing a second time then.
And what height is he going at? 20?
It was up in the low 30,000 feet.
Is that pushing it?
Yeah, it's seriously, if anything goes wrong with your oxygen system, you've got seconds, not minutes, to sort it out. And
he's still flying now?
Fedor, he is. He's just had a balloon, as well as this twice around the world thing. He's trying to break the world altitude record and go to 140,000 feet or something.
That's space.
Yeah, but that's
space, isn't it?
Yeah,
140,000. That's So he'd be in the actual basket, but floating out of it.
It's just a frame underneath a balloon, and he'll just step off. So
these people, they do something and they achieve it and they go never again, and then it says that something in their body that goes, you know what, I want to do it again. I want to do something a little bit harder as well. And wasn't there a guy that free fell as well? It was Red Bull.
Yeah, Red Bull have just done, what's his name, Bort Galmer or something.
Some guy. Was that out of a balloon as well?
Yeah, he was out of a balloon, and that he broke the record that was held by a guy, Joe Kittinger, back in the late 60s. Was the first guy to go supersonic without the aid of an aircraft. He jumped out of a balloon at 110,000 feet or something.
Right, and you are going towards the Earth at that. You're not sort of going the other way
it's
towards
straight
the moon.
down, straight down.
It's supposed to go down.
Yeah, so 6 minutes of free fall or something straight towards it. Yeah.
Jeez. Right. Well, there's some interesting stuff there, and I mean, we could talk for hours about your 85 records, 85 Australian records. Like, just one's enough. You got 85, and you told me about one of them, which was going solo across Australia. Any other good ones in there as well?
A lot of those records were done in aircraft that I designed and built myself.
So you're not just getting off the shelf aircraft.
No. Most of them I built myself. So the one I'm probably most proud of, I built a double skin balloon. So a balloon inside a balloon.
Yep.
And it was made out of.
Why would you do that? Why would you do what's a double skin?
Makes it very thermally efficient.
Right.
So it means your duration flights.
Yeah, okay.
So or your duration performance is much better. Your fuel burns much lower. So that was done over about 5 years. I had a couple of cracks at it. First time took a couple of balloons up into Alaska in midwinter, flying around in minus 35. And these little balloons that are so small, there's no basket. You basically hang in a string bag underneath the balloon.
Like a Hessian bag. A string bag.
Lighter than Hessian. What? Yeah, I think the harness on the little one weighs 300 grams.
So you're strapped to a balloon inside of a balloon in nothing more than a string bag.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, that was the double skin balloon was made out of mylar film, like chip packet material, but much lighter weight. So standard chip packet.
And obviously you're by yourself.
Yeah.
You're not, you got to go solo on that one.
Yeah,
You can't take your missus up on that one.
No,
Get a bit tight.
it's a bit tight.
It's a bit of a tight squeeze. Okay, so that would have been, and obviously the time spent sort of executing that, you said over a few years, is it right?
Yeah, it was kind of trip to Alaska in 94 and then up into Canada in 95. No, I'm 10 years out there, 2004, 2005.
How do you pack your balloon? How do you buy it over there? How do you
no, they're quite small, these things. So
okay. Well, what size are we talking about?
Well, a typical passenger balloon, like the one you went for a fly in, is about 210,000 cubic feet in volume, so 11,000 cubic metres in volume. The small one that I was in is 250 cubic metres.
Jeez. So a
So
fifth. Is that right? A fifth? No.
a 50th.
50th. Oh, jeez.
So
Lucky I'm not.
very, very, very small. Because it is so small, it's got to run very hot, so you've got to use different materials. When I went to Alaska the first time, I actually managed to melt the top out of one of the balloons. It was
You had an inside balloon to help you.
no, that was in a single skin balloon. That one.
I was going to say, what happens if you start melting?
Yeah,
the balloon?
you don't want to do that. So.
That's not good. There's no fail safe, is there, with a balloon that goes? Yeah, once you go, you go. And it's not a good for that one. Okay, so I know this is a drone podcast, but it was all things aviation, and it's as much as talking about the people behind the industry and the things that they've done, which is absolutely fascinating. But the best location that you've flown for me, it's a scenic rim, but it's because it's the only place I've flown on a hot air balloon. You've flown all around the world. Yep. Is there a place that you've got up, you've gone to, and you've hit 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 feet and go, you know what, no one will ever see this like I'm seeing it right now, whether it's Alaska, whether it's Australia, wherever? Was there a moment where you're going, holy shit. This is amazing?
Yeah.
And did you take your camera? Because it doesn't exist. If it's not on the gram, it doesn't exist.
I went in a competition. I've done a few international races. There's a competition called the Gordon Bennett Cup, which is a long distance race in a normally hydrogen-filled balloon. They have a fixed volume, 1,000 cubic metres volume in the balloon, and
you just go.
The aim is to go. The one who goes the furthest distance wins.
Wow.
I've been in that 4 times now.
And how many balloons are in the sky at any one time in that comp?
It's usually 25.
That seems like a lot because if you're sailing and you've got other boats and you know how to tack and get out of harm's way, but with a balloon,
once you're in the air, they tend to separate a bit.
Okay,
and it becomes a real tactical game. So different people play different tactics and go different ways. So,
you might see someone going to your left. What are they going over there for? And then we'll find out they hop into a jet stream and then just fly ahead or whatever. Yeah, and so as much knowing the weather patterns as it is. Yeah. So and how'd you go on those comps?
Always finished bottom half of the field, but had a really good time.
Just got to compete, it's just about being in
it.
Being up there and seeing 20 odd other balloons. Now, do you shape your balloon in any funny way? Because I know there's a few different designs out there.
They're all just spherical balloons. These
industry standard. You can't have a balloon with like a set of wings on it or something like that. You go, hang on a sec, that design's pretty cool, and that's gonna.
That particular competition. It's really about the strategy and working the weather and who's got the biggest balls. So who's going to push it the most? Right?
Not the biggest balloon, the biggest balls. Yeah,
biggest
who's
balls,
got the biggest set?
Like the competition last year, the guys that won flew for about 75 hours, and they took off in France, and ending up
after 75 hours.
They were down in the bottom end of Greece.
So are all the balloons going in the general same direction, or you could have a balloon that goes, you know what, I know there's some massive winds that way. It's gonna take me all the way over to in the middle of America, but it's based on distance from the actual location you should take off. So balloons just go
straight line distance.
The balloons just go left, right,
ever in centre.
A straight line. So if you loop around, you just do laps. It doesn't count. It's as the crow flies.
Yeah.
All right.
So the guys that won last year, there were 4 teams ended up on this one stretch of beach in Greece, and the guys who won actually flew out. They flew over the beach, out into the Mediterranean, and then flew back, dropped down right down onto the water where there was a wind taking them back, and they landed on the high tide mark. Whereas the other guys had landed on the dunes 100 metres back.
But going around. Because that says, so they got that extra distance there, pulled it back.
Yeah, so they won by like 100 metres or something.
After 75 hours.
Yeah. And had to go out over the water where if they hadn't got the wind coming back, they were swimming. They definitely didn't have enough.
And how do you jump ship with a jump balloon? Jump basket with a balloon sort of coming down. We should rename this the best balloon podcast. Very interesting. No, I know nothing about it, which is why I'm asking so many questions, mate. It must be a pleasurable sort of little. Well, it's not a hobby; it's your business. It's
it was my business for 20 years. I used to fly over Brisbane for 20 years. So.
I mean, there's so many other things here we can talk about. Obviously, you being a pilot as well. Let's talk drones for a little bit. Obviously, you're in the drone space. What do you think at the market? Give me your basic summary of the drone space and where it's at, where it's heading to, both with regulations and technology, commercial, industry-based stuff. It's a pretty open-ended question.
There's about a dozen questions
right there.
Yeah, it's the boom area.
Yep.
In aviation, and will be for some time to come. There are an enormous number of opportunities in design, manufacture, operating, R&D stuff. There's just the number of use cases is just extraordinary, and every day someone comes up with a new one.
I suppose it's all about, especially the new stuff, and we see it all the time. We're in the space and we see new technology coming to space, coming to the market, and you get excited, and then you've got to find out whether that technology is you can use it commercially or for any sort of industry. So we're always looking at things for that as well, and it's there is a lot of money getting thrown from an R&D perspective. Governments are throwing money at ideas as well. So it is a very interesting space. And where do you see the biggest Achilles heel for the drone space at the moment?
It's probably in the delay in getting regulations. It's like the regulators globally are, because they're big organisations that are developing this stuff, they're slower to move than the industry. So the industry is constantly outpacing them, and that will be the case for a long time to come, I think.
And do you think it's like you've got, and like all things, new industries are set themselves, but a technology or something which will be the industry standard, which will then form part of the regulation. So technology always is going to sort of outpace regulation, because regulation a lot of the times falls at a very slow pace. Technology is a lot quicker.
Yeah, the environments where the regulators seem to be keeping better pace is where they're coming up with outcome-based regulations rather than setting, you can do it this way. They say, well, you can do the job so long as you get these safety outcomes. And then leaving it to the operators to show how they're getting those outcomes. There are just, it's such a broad environment, and people trying to do so many different things to try and nail down the specific way that you can do a certain class of job. Is never going to work. And as the technology changes, the most sensible way to do the job will change with the tech.
Yeah, and it's, as I said, it's outcome based. Forming regulation that is outcome based as well. I mean, there would have been some interesting tech that you've come across at the moment that's that you go, well, that's going to be pretty cool. But then, as you said, the regulation means that you can't use that. And it might be something really simple like, a payload delivery. That in itself, if people on the streets walk and go, you know what, delivering packages, something that seems so simple. I'm going to take a drone, I'm going to put something in it, I'm going to send it straight to the client. And you think, that's easy. That should happen. We've got the technology for it. Then you break down why it can't be that simple as well.
Well, I think for that delivery site type tech, that the drone technology is there.
Definitely.
It's the easy bit. It's the social ramifications of having all of these
birds in the sky,
separating them so that they don't crash into each other, dealing with the noise issues, dealing with the privacy issues that people perceive that for most cases don't exist. Most of these things don't have cameras on them.
Yeah.
They're just delivering a parcel. But the public perception of those things is all mixed up.
And do you think it's going to change? Because only up until 5 years ago, if you put a drone up in the sky, you would have a crowd of people hovering around you asking you stupid questions, and people will be pointing at it. But it's now when you fly a drone, and I go out and do a job or see a drone on the beach or whatever, people don't really, they go, oh, it's a drone. And sort of that public perception is, okay, they're not here to spy on me. This person is here to do a job or fly to capture this sort of footage. Do you think that'll ever be the case for something like drone deliveries, or even manned drones? So passenger drones, for example, because I know that there's a lot of interesting R&D, if you can call it R&D, happening out of Dubai. There's these interesting drones that are carrying people. I've seen some epic fails. I've also seen some good ones as well. And you look at those regulations, and they seem to do whatever they want in that space. Yeah. But do you ever think it will be that case where drone deliveries will be, oh, it's just another drone delivering something, and that the public is accepting of that?
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. It's just normalising. Like, the public needs to normalise what's going on, and as we build experience as a society around some of this stuff, things that are sort of seen on the fringe now will become normal. And so that's easy.
And what about what about delivering? Because CASA don't really, they don't like drones a lot. They're not against it, but they're not a big fan of it. But what about passenger drones then? Because if a drone falls from the sky, you have to worry about a crashed drone, and getting the street sweeper and cleaning it up, and hopefully that it, if you fly correctly, that it falls to the ground without injuring someone, damaging property. The next question is, can that happen in a drone, a passenger drone? Can a drone take someone from Brisbane to the Gold Coast, from Melbourne to Sydney, with CASA being safe in the fact that that person in the drone is not operating, unlike a manned aircraft? There's some pretty cool tech coming out now. Whether or not it's commercial based, but some of the stuff in Dubai is interesting. But will that happen, do you reckon? Because I watched Back to the Future the other day. With my boys, went to the movies in COVID. It was a great experience. I've seen it plenty of times, but obviously back 1985 the movie was made, and 2000 they went forward 30 years, I think, 2000. So that makes it 2015. There was cars flying in the sky carrying people. Well, Will that ever the Jetsons back in the 70s, 60s even? Will that ever happen?
Absolutely.
And there are a lot of oil barons that like doing it. But again, you got R&D, people trying stuff, people moving people. Will this ever happen?
It's happening now. It's happening now. In small pockets.
In small pockets, and in places where the regulations might be a little bit more relaxed, or these guys might have enough pull in the jurisdiction to say, I'm going to put this drone up because you're an oil baron. Yes, you can do that.
And that's part of it. Yeah. Some of the jurisdictions see the enormous economic benefit in being at the almost bleeding edge of this stuff. There will be some people lost in the early days, but it was the same with
flight,
same with airplanes and helicopters,
probably balloons as well.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, the Hindenburg
disaster.
Yep.
But the technology will evolve fairly rapidly. There's a few stumbling blocks at the moment. There aren't any certification standards around these things. Like how do we need to build them? What are the performance standards around them? A lot of that stuff can be drawn from the manned world, but it hasn't been locked in yet. The traffic management, unmanned traffic management systems is a huge hurdle.
That would be.
And that affects this urban mobility project as well as things like drone delivery. It's common technology across those, and we need that tech in place before we can get these things flying around
And do you
almost autonomously.
Yeah, and do you see having almost like a highway, airspace highway, what they do with obviously manned aircraft, but unmanned aircraft, like at the moment drones are flying around everywhere. There's no, but for commercial use, whether it be passenger delivery, whether it be goods or services delivery, that there are literally highways in the sky that drones are only allowed into to minimise, if a drone flies over a house, a small drone, a Phantom or whatever, even a Mavic, falls on a roof. Okay, there's going to be damage to the drone, maybe a few tiles broken. If you have a person that falls from the sky,
yep, it's a whole
mess.
different deal.
It's and over public space as well, over people, populated areas, and things like that.
Yep. I fully expect that we will have lanes in the sky like we have roads on the ground, and maybe one's on top of the other. That'll be required to get around a lot of the social requirements, noise and stuff like that.
I mean, imagine that drone there. That would make it. I fly. The biggest drone I've flown is a M600. Weighs 15 kilograms. I'd like to see the noise on that thing.
Yeah,
that we've just seen
it's
in
going to be
Dubai.
noisy. I think it's got 20 odd rotors on it.
And you have to go a certain height as well.
Yeah. But
I mean, I get these questions all the time because I'm in that drone space and people asking me, when are we going to have this? When are we going? Well, the technology's there. That's not a problem, and it's going to get better and better. But then, from a regulation point of view, there needs to be some sort of integration there with regulations if they want that. Cass, or they might not go. You know what? That's way outside of where we want the airspace to be at the moment. Do they want that?
I think the regulators in Australia, like CASA, is actually pretty on this, and Department of Transport's got a team there now working on this stuff, and they're not backwards, but I think they're taking a close follower rather than a leader approach with it.
Yeah.
So
they'll have a look and see what other countries do,
doing.
see where they fell down, made mistakes, and then we might be an early, instead of an innovator, sort of like just follow behind. This is what that country is doing, which is interesting because we pretty much led the way in commercial activity for drone operators. A lot of countries looked at our regulations and said, what is Australia doing? They're doing a great job, and probably use some of our rules and morphed them into their own regulations in other countries as well.
Yeah. And that's true. Australia was certainly the leader in the we had the first rule set governing this stuff, but I think to a certain extent CAS has sat on that outcome for a little longer than they should have, and there's a gap there now where other countries have definitely got a bit of a lead on us, particularly in this unmanned traffic management and airspace approvals and things is a real problem for the industry now.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, and one of I suppose the frustration that we have as operators is we go through all the processes, we get our training, and for us to get access into areas that your hobbyists can't get into, we seem to be hitting a bit of a brick wall, or the time spent in trying to fly in controlled airspace or areas that otherwise are out, that are out of bounds for hobbyists. We seem to be not treated like a hobbyist, but still there's not a lot of confidence, even though we've done our training, we've got our REOC, we've got our endorsements and everything like that. But it still seems to be, no, we don't want you in this space, and we're going to make it. We'll allow you to come in if you do the right things, and it might be the time spent getting approval is way outside of what is actually required or what you can do from a commercial activity. So if I go to a client and say, hey, we can fly in this space, it's going to take 20 odd business days, your budget's probably going to double because it's a small job, and by the way, we've got a window of about 5 minutes. You just lose that job.
And that's the common complaint in the industry now is the effort involved in preparing the application for an approval, the cost and the delay in processing it.
Yeah.
Sort of three things that
it comes up a fair bit.
Knocks a lot of the operations out.
And then because you're spending a lot of time and effort into your process so that you may be able to get activity, fly in those spaces. And that should be a positive thing. That should be something that you actually are allowed to do, and that separates you from a normal hobbyist. I can fly in there, and CASA or whoever deems me safe enough to fly in that space. And it is, we've lost a lot of work, and I dare say that a lot of other companies, drone operators training, that just don't even go to the client. Go, you know what? Sometimes it's actually quicker. We've taken helicopters and flown 500 feet,
Absolutely.
and actually it's cheaper to do that. We'll get one of our guys hanging out the window, take some photos, take some footage, and that's going to be cheaper for you to do that. Yeah. So anyway.
Some people in the drone industry forget that the drone is just a tool for getting a sensor of some sort in the air, and sometimes a stick is a really good tool.
Well, we've said that. We've said
a stick or a helicopter.
You're right. And sometimes they want a drone to do it. And I go, well, hang on a second, there's a helicopter there. We can get a cherry picker. We can actually get on top of another building and take a photo of that building without actually doing anything. We just get access to the top of that roof. Because flying in the city, in the middle of the CBD, taking a picture of a construction site, let's get to the top of another building and take a photo. Unless you actually want an orbit or whatever, around that, a video around that, flying around that location. So you're right in that fact that some clients are so fixated on getting a drone to do it.
I think it's more the drone operators forget that the product that they're selling is not flying a drone. The product is the image or the data that they're giving to the client. That's what the client wants.
Exactly.
They don't much care how you get it normally.
The size of the drone also is another thing, because some operators want to have the biggest drone. But if some of these drones now, even these things here, they shoot, for basic stuff, they shoot 4K imagery and 20 megapixel camera, and you go. But they want to turn up to a client and get this massive M600 with a big red on it. So that's cool, but that's going to cost you $25K. This thing costs you $1,000. So you're right about that. It's about what is the outcome and how can we get that in the cheapest possible way for the client. What else going on, mate, in your world? You are busy as, I don't know, I mean, I thought I was busy, but you are next level busy. So what's taking your time up at the moment, apart from that other project in the Stratosphere project that we'll talk about, we can't talk about?
Oh, I've got as you know, I've got a delegation from CASA to issue the commercial drone operator certificates, the REOCs.
How's that going? Is that showing?
It's busy. CASA told me the other day that we're just shy of 2,000 REOCs.
2,000 REOCs. So
just 2,000.
And look, a lot of them are going to be single operator REOC holders, which is how you get started.
Yep.
That's busy. That's a lot. That's a big increase from what it was the last couple of years. So for those who don't know what a REOC is,
it's kind of the commercial operator's ticket. So we have a pilot license, a remote pilot license in drone space. And we have a REOC, a remote operator certificate, which is kind of like the airline license for
think of a pilot getting his pilot license, and he can't just go to a secondhand plane store and fly a plane. He's got to go, if he wants to go to Qantas, the business Qantas has a REOC, or what do they call it?
Air operator.
Air operator certificate. And that manages your planes, your flights, your people, safety management systems, the whole works. So it's very paper based, orientated sort of process to go through, isn't it?
It is, It is just ticking the boxes and keeping the records. It's the structure of things at the moment is I guess has been modelled off what happens in the the manned aircraft space. Some of that isn't necessarily completely appropriate for what we're doing in drone space, and we're very much in the case at the moment where the paperwork associated with the job will quite often weigh more than the aircraft that we're using.
Unless you go online.
And it's getting to the case now with the changes that are coming in on the 10th of October with the manual of standards, that the recording requirements become much more onerous.
And tell me a little bit about the manual of standards and what that actually means from a basic level.
Yeah, it's we've got regulations, Civil Aviation Safety Regulations Part 101, which is just strict law.
Yep.
Okay. In the manual of standards, they sort of flesh out how those rules are to be complied with.
Yep.
It's called the Manual of
The
Standards.
Moz
The
in the
Moz.
industry, yep. 'Cause it's like a
we're-
mosquito, just a noise around
so
your
no-
ear. You're just like going, get away, Moz. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, so we're in the second iteration of that now. The changes that come in October are a lot around the training requirements for remote pilot licenses, and all the training schools at the moment are going through
Yeah.
ticking the boxes for that. But there's also a lot of changes for operators and the recording requirements around all the operations that they do.
And how have you found, obviously, from a training perspective, there's the new Moz, which is, we're going through it at the moment. And it takes a lot of resources, time and money to actually get to those standards. There's about 50 odd training organisations out there at the moment. Do you think it'll affect some of them? Someone will just go, you know what, this is way too much effort. We'll just concentrate on services based, with our REOC or whatever.
Yep. I think we will, by the 10th of October, we'll probably lose half of the training orgs. Well, certainly there were 57. I'd be surprised if we have 30 remain after October.
And what does that mean for an average punter who wants to come in and get their REPL? If their training license, the basic multi-rotor under 7 kilogram. Is that more work for them? Is it easy? Yeah.
The syllabus is much more comprehensive under the Moz. It's tailored quite heavily to what would happen in the manned world. I think we missed the opportunity to focus more on drone-related stuff and really ticking the stuff there. I know the industry associations of putting up their hand and saying we need to sort this out and actually make it much more drone-specific, and hopefully we'll see in the next little bit that there is a bit of a shift there and a bit of a redevelopment of some of that material, but that's going to cause more pain for the training orgs that have just gone through and written all their new materials for. So don't roll your eyes like that, Lee.
Yes. James, where's James? He's probably scratching what's going on.
Yeah. But it's like it is such a dynamic field that where anyone that's in there, if you don't like change, you're probably in the wrong space at the moment.
And if you don't like change as well, it's like how we developed as a business as well. You think you might have a great business plan. I've got this idea in the drone space. I want to try and execute it. And then regulation changes or technology changes. It gets outdated and something else comes in, and all of a sudden you've got to pivot as a business. I mean, look at your business is so varied over the years. I could list them off, but I won't because we're running out of time. And I dare say, as a business owner yourself, and we haven't even touched on that, you have pivoted so many times because you've seen, righto, where's the industry heading? Where am I going to go? Okay, there's a market for that, and there's a market for that, and to put all your eggs in one basket would be crazy to do that at this, in this industry.
Well, I've always
I've seen.
I've got a few balls in the air at any one time, and deliberately slow. It's a risk management process. You've got all your eggs in one basket. If it goes really well, you probably do really well, but if it falls over, then you might be.
Yeah, so it's definitely an industry to be excited and to get involved in it, but obviously keeping your eye on, you have to have that larger focus on what the industry is doing so that you and have the flexibility as a business, and the smaller ones probably handle it a bit better because they can easily pivot and change a lot quicker than the larger businesses. Larger businesses take a while to change, and then sometimes they've just missed the boat.
But if you're in a larger business, having little sidelines, don't put all the eggs in one basket. So you do have that opportunity to sort of take the opportunities when they come up.
Yeah, it's exciting. How long have we been going, Matt? An hour. That's about right. It's been good. Like we're probably going to wind up very shortly, but I find someone like yourself, we work with you, and you are such a wealth full of knowledge as to the space. Spent 30, 40 years in the space, and obviously, again, you've shown that over the last 10 years ago, where was the drone space to what it was now? It probably wasn't even your radar.
Didn't exist.
You're off, flying your balloons and going, drones, what's that? There's people making their backyard. But now it takes up probably a little chunk of your business, doesn't it?
It's a big chunk of my
A big chunk, bigger, and it's getting bigger and bigger. So you doing any more ballooning?
Yeah. So I've still got a couple of little small balloons. I only little backpack ones now that I'll go and fly on my own. I was last week I was meant to be going up to Maryborough to an air show to do a little gig up there, but it fell over at the last minute. The guy I was going up there with got locked up in quarantine.
What, did he do something bad? Did he? You trying to get across the border?
No, one of his kids was at school where the
bloody kids. They're petri dishes, aren't they?
Yeah,
they just carry if it's not COVID, they're carrying something
else. So anyway, that's all good. But still flying other stuff as well.
Plenty on.
Do a bit of gliding and stuff now too.
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure, Steve. Thanks. I know you're a very busy man. Thanks for coming in today. I found it fascinating. We caught up beforehand. I purposely didn't ask you questions because I wanted to ask you on the show because I find it really interesting, well full of knowledge, and you've helped our business out heaps as well, just with generic information, even off the bat stuff that obviously not a that you don't even charge us for because, and you probably see whenever you see our numbers call you because something's going on, you probably there's a reason why you put us through to message bank. Oh, not James again, not Lee again. But thanks again, mate. Very interesting stuff. It's not only drones, it's about you as a person, and much appreciated, mate. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having us, Lee.